a working age population equal to France in the next 7 years is a child of their one-child policy, while India has a more organic control of our population. So I would be careful with positioning populations as either curses or as gifts. It's what you do with your population and can you make them productive. And we've proven that 5 million people in India can export more software than Saudi Arabia did oil last year, or 15 million Indians outside India can send us $100 billion of remittances. So I would just position this more as a productivity problem than a jobs problem.
So interestingly, you're saying don't get into the binary of demographic dividend versus disaster. You're actually suggesting look at issues of productivity.
Co-powered by QO, European Bath Lounges. Let time wait.
Good evening. You're watching 6 p.m. Prime here on India Today. I'm Akshita and Nandgopal, and this evening we're focusing on a documentary that's been released by BBC. It's called India, the Modi Question. It set the cat among the pigeons because part of this documentary, or rather the focus of this documentary, is on the 2002 Gujarat riots. And they make several claims about Prime Minister Modi, then the Chief Minister, and his role in these riots. The Indian government has had something to say about this. The UK Prime Minister has also spoken out on this. We'll get you details of all the reactions coming in. The headlines first. Massive outrage over BBC documentary on Narendra Modi. Rishi Sunak says he doesn't agree with the characterization in the film. Ministry of External Affairs also slams propaganda. Prime Minister Modi returns to state of war Karnataka for the second time in a week, unveils projects worth over 10,000 crore in mega infra push. After Olympic wrestlers hit the streets for the second consecutive day in Jantar Mantar, Sports Ministry meets the wrestlers. Wrestling Federation boss brazens it out amid sensational allegations. Age shames the wrestlers, says protesters have passed their best performance age. Sensational allegations of sleazy acts against WFI chief Brij Bhushan. Wrestler Anshu Malik accuses Brij Bhushan of staying in the same hotel as women athletes. We're hearing that the Federation president could resign on January 22nd. And Bundy Sanjay breaks his silence on son's slapgate, says take action against my son if he's found guilty, says he's also surrendered before cops. And our top focus is on a BBC documentary on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It sparked a massive storm and a huge debate, rightly so, over the claims that have been made over the 2002 Gujarat riots. The Ministry of External Affairs has now reacted to all these claims that have been made in the documentary, calling this report as a propaganda piece which is designed to push a discredited narrative. MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said that this report clearly lacks objectivity. The documentary, which is referred to a UK government report on the 2002 riots, has claimed that this report mentions Prime Minister Modi, then the Chief Minister of Gujarat, proactively prevented the police from stopping the riots. There are several question marks, loopholes in this documentary, including the fact that there's no reference to the most recent Supreme Court verdict. The BBC has referred to a report by a team that was led by the then UK Foreign Secretary Jack Straw. Reacting to a question raised by British MP Imran Hussain on this issue, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also spoke out, saying that his government doesn't agree with the characterization of the report. Not only that, you have a senior Indian diplomat, Kanwal Sibal, who was the Foreign Secretary during the 2002 riots. He set the record straight, saying that there was clear mischief by the UK mission as they had sent their diplomat to Gujarat and circulated what he called a slanted report to EU envoys. He's also said that he'd issued a warning to all missions in Delhi not to interfere in India's internal affairs.
Imran Hussain, Mr. Speaker, last night the BBC revealed the Foreign Office knew the extent of Narendra Modi's involvement in the Gujarat massacre that paved the way for the persecution of Muslims and other minorities we see in India today, with senior diplomats reporting that the massacre could not have taken place without a climate of impunity created by Modi, and that he was, in the FCO's own words, directly responsible for this violence. Given that hundreds were brutally killed and that families across India and the world, including here in the UK, are still without justice, does the Prime Minister agree with his diplomats in the Foreign Office that Modi was directly responsible? And just what more does the Foreign Office know of his involvement in this grave act of ethnic cleansing?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the UK government's position on this has been clear and long-standing and hasn't changed. Of course, we don't tolerate persecution where it appears anywhere, but I'm not sure I agree at all with the characterisation that the honourable gentleman has put forward.
We have a High Commission, we have information to that video. Okay, so that is not being screened here. I am repeating again. We think it's a propaganda piece. Our assessment is it's a propaganda piece. Now, how can you say that? I'm saying it. We have seen it and I feel it's a propaganda piece. I don't know what's the perspective. You could say it's not aired here, true. Comments by former Foreign Secretary in that and something about reports that he is referring. Look, he seems to be referring to some internal UK report. How do I have access to that? And it's a 20-year-old report. Why would I just jump on it now? And just because Jack Straw says it, how does it get that much legitimacy? I heard words like inquiry and investigation. There's a reason we use the word colonial mindset. We don't use words loosely. What inquiry? There were diplomats here. Investigation. Are they ruling the country? I'm sorry. I do not agree with that characterization, and obviously there is an agenda behind it. UK citizens' death. Look, if there are deaths here in our country, they're followed by our legal procedure. Whether they took it up in 2002, look, I don't have a ready answer. I wasn't around, and I'll have to check whether it was taken up, whether that's a formality of taken up or not, whether legal systems. But as you very well know, there has been a lot of legal process against deaths that have happened during that time. I wouldn't be able to answer whether it was taken up or not without checking the facts on that.
Let me bring in Gaurav Sawant, who has been tracking the story and tracking all the reactions that have been coming in. Gaurav, good evening. Among all of the questions that are doing the rounds over this film that the BBC has showed, a two-part series on Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they've called it India, the Modi question, whatever that means. The timing of this documentary is what is most suspect here for many.
Well, some have been asking about the timing and some of the aspects that are being raised, the questions that are being raised. One, you talk about the 2002 Gujarat riots. Is it in context? Is all that context being shown? There are some complaints that are being made that there is some very clever cut and splice job that's been done in this. The fact that then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Narendra Modi, sought assistance from neighboring states and that assistance wasn't given. Those aspects haven't been taken into consideration is one of the complaints that is being made. Whether that is taken up officially and formally, that remains to be seen. But the fact that they're also talking about Article 370 and, what is their business about Article 370? It's the Indian Parliament that's taken a step. It's the people of this country who voted members of Parliament and not, as the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs saying, the BBC or the British government does not dictate to India. The fact that Jack Straw, then British Foreign Secretary, saying that they're ordering an inquiry and they've sent a team. What's their locus? What's their locus standi to conduct an inquiry in India? India's not a British colony. Not after 1947.
Very true. Gaurav, just stay on with me and do feel free to also ask questions of the two guests, panelists who are joining us on this broadcast. First of all, let me introduce Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary. He was in fact the Foreign Secretary during the riots in 2002 to 2003. Good evening, sir. Absolute pleasure having you with us here on India Today. Also, quickly, let me introduce Lord Rami Ranger, member of the House of Lords in the UK. He's joining us from London. Good afternoon, Lord Rami Ranger. Ambassador Sibal, if I could begin with you. You know, you've put out a very interesting reaction to the fact that the BBC documentary has referred to a UK government report, and you've called it a slanted report. What did you mean by that, sir?
Well, you know, after I took over, the British High Commission sent one of their officers, I think it was the first secretary, I don't clearly recall, to do an investigation on the spot of what happened during these riots. And then they circulated their findings, their report, to the EU heads of missions. And one of the EU ambassadors close to us, he informed me of this. It was a very negative report, obviously. So I took the step to issue, if you like, a kind of a warning to the EU heads of missions and the diplomatic corps in general, not to interfere in internal affairs. This was totally uncalled for the British High Commission to take upon itself the responsibility to conduct an investigation on the spot on an issue which was very, very sensitive, and try to mold the opinion of the European heads of missions in this regard. And I had another occasion when I had a luncheon meeting with the EU heads of mission in Delhi. I again, at the end of it was on India-EU relations in general, and at the end of it, I again cautioned them about not interfering in our internal affairs and making judgments on this issue, when it was quite clear that all the inquiries that needed to be done were being done, and the issue was being discussed by our own people in the press and elsewhere. So there was no need for a foreign...
Ambassador Sibal, if I may, are they allowed to do so? Are diplomats permitted to carry out an investigation and submit reports?
Well, you know, you can't stop anybody from any embassy to visit any part of India, even if there are problems in that area, because we are a democratic country, we don't stop them. But what really the missions normally do is not to put themselves out in this manner where the host government can view what they do very negatively. Now, I can understand a situation if some British nationals or the British community in India was, in a sense, being targeted, and there was legitimate concern to find out what had happened. But this was purely an internal affair. And then, you know, 20 years after that, to make a documentary and quote Jack Straw in this regard. Obviously, Jack Straw didn't come here physically to inspect anything. They were dependent on the reports that they received from the High Commission here. But, you know, the fact that they have done this documentary 20 years after the event shows that they feel somehow that they must get into these issues here because of various things, domestic pressures, their own very large Pakistani origin population and Muslim community. And also, you know, they have always taken a very, how should I say, protective view of Pakistan. And today, you can see The Economist and Independent and other British media are very anti-Modi, very anti-RSS. And they are raising this issue constantly about the minorities in India being threatened.
You know, you've raised, Ambassador Sibal, some very valid points about whether this is truly an impartial documentary. But the question that I have, sir, following up with what Gaurav also asked you, is the locus standi here and the clear malified intent. But I want to understand from you, sir, because it's been 20 years. Has this report ever been spoken of before?
No, you see, this is a on-the-spot sort of a report that a foreign diplomat goes and then sends it to his own government and then circulates it within the EU. In terms of pure diplomatic, how these things are done, it is nothing unusual. I've seen myself in Russia, where when there are some so-called human rights issues locally, I found Western ambassadors actually being very visible in terms of showing their commitment on this issue. And if a human rights activist has been killed or whatever else, and there is a funeral that's going to be held, many of them go and attend that, knowing that the local government would look upon this very negatively. But you do this when you don't have friendly inclinations towards the government, as is the case between UK and the European Union and Russia, which is much more pronounced today. But India being a friendly country, and given the sensitivities of the past, for them to play this kind of a game and try and expose more the fissures in India and try to profit from them and create a narrative internationally against the present government, this is simply not in consonance with the kind of relations that we want to build, and that 30-year and the roadmap that we have built till 2030, and the FTA and other things that we intend to sign. The British press is very negative. It is very harmful. True. In terms of what it's doing to our relationship and creating misunderstandings.
And I think the government also, Ambassador Sibal, has sent out a very, very strong statement right now, at least publicly, saying that this is quite clearly propaganda. I just want to highlight that on our screens right now, what we're showing is a protest against the release of this documentary. This was an agitation that happened months ago in October 2022, where several people came together outside the BBC office in London saying, do not release this documentary. It's propaganda. Do not come out with this documentary. You see some of the placards that are being held there saying Hindu lives matter, half-truths is a big lie. Lord Rummy Ranger is also with us, joining us from London. Good afternoon, sir. What do you make of this documentary and the entire narrative around the 2002 riots that's essentially being resurrected from the dead?
I think it's in a very bad taste. It is scoring your own goal by creating hatred between Hindus and Muslims. They are going to divide the community and divide their country. They'll be very bad for the social cohesion. We are one community now. We have one king and one country, and therefore we should not be created any policy which brings this to community at a loggerhead. The policy of divide and rule worked in India, but if you're going to use this, it will damage your own country as well. I think it was in a very bad taste. And the Imran Hussain, who made a false statement in the House of Commons that he had consulted the Foreign Office, and this is what they said. This is totally lie. We checked, and they said he had never consulted, and nothing was said to him, and there is no such reference in the Foreign Office, and they are going to take issue with the leader. So therefore, this is the hallmark of Pakistani community, Pakistani leadership. They are unable to rise above the rest on merit. India is rising, and what do? They just find something negative to feel good. I appeal to these guys that they have to rise, like the Indian community has risen, exporting doctor, engineers, scientists, teacher, businessmen, and now the
Lord
Prime
Ranger,
Minister of the
if I
United
may,
Kingdom. So they need to
if I could, once again come back to the documentary for a moment. Why is it that you've objected to this documentary? Why have you called it biased?
I have called it biased because they have just picked up a couple of guys who were anti-Modi. There is a large community, Muslim community, which voted for Mr. Modi. They love Mr. Modi. Having stopped the triple talaq, you need guts. You need guts to stop this, the Kashmir, 387, whatever it was, to remove that, to make the Kashmiri equal to the rest of India and giving them the share of the Indian growth and development. So it is totally biased. I can project picture in a way I want to show. So the BBC wants, by damaging Indian community or their Prime Minister, they want to feel good. They're not going to feel good. They're going to unite.
Are you saying that there is an agenda, there is a motive, that there is a bigger design behind this?
There is the only design is the stupidity. They are scoring own goals. They damage their own country because we are a very hard-working community. We are not in prison as much as the Pakistani community. We do not do grooming of young girls. We do not do drug peddling. So they should not antagonize the community, which has contributed so much. We employ nearly 5 million British people, in businesses. So they, by insulting a community which is hardworking, positive, progressive, they are now going to. But anyway, BBC has lost credibility. It's a biased broadcasting corporation, Bakwas Broadcasting Corporation. That kind of name are coming up now. So the BBC was held in a very high esteem at one place, but now Why don't they go and do a documentary of Tony Blair, who was responsible for 300,000 deaths in Iraq with the false narrative of weapon of mass destruction?
Okay.
Why don't they investigate on grooming gang or something like that?
You
pick
also
on
said,
a
why don't they do a documentary on history of Winston Churchill? Why is that, sir?
Exactly. They should be doing on the famine in Bengal. They should be doing a documentary on the massacre of a Pakistani army of 2 million Bengalis. And the women, 300,000 were raped. They should be doing documentary on that. But because there are 30 to 40 Labour MPs who depend on Pakistani votes, because Pakistani votes are the best because they're in ghettos. Because when Indian does well, he moves to English area. But unfortunately, Pakistani, because they have never empowered their women, their leaders are not focused. They're focused on religion. They do not even know that if religion had the power, Bangladesh would still be part of their country. In fact, these people treated Bengali on their race in such an appalling manner that they should be ashamed of themselves.
So you allege that there is an agenda, there's a bias that the BBC shows through this documentary. Very clearly, this is also the stance, Akshita, that's been taken by the government. They've questioned the veracity, the timing and the facts in this documentary.
All right, let's see how this plays out going forward. But clearly a lot of reactions coming in questioning whether this documentary is truly impartial and unbiased, or was it with a clear intent and a motive that is being put out right now, 10 years later. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sybil, as well as Lord Rummy Ranger, for taking the time out and joining us here on India Today. Thanks to Gaurav as well for joining us from the newsroom. We are going to continue getting you all the reactions that come in on that big story. I'm slipping into a short break. Coming up on the other side, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while there's a lot of talk about this documentary, is busy on a poll blitz. From Karnataka to Maharashtra, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressing huge rallies. We'll get you the highlights.
The men and women who built Indian industry, and the young guns who are shaping tomorrow's India. From storied careers to unicorn dreams.
The equity market is a dynamic space that needs sharper insights and perfect timing.
What stock, what fund, what to pick and what to sell.
How do you make money on the markets? And what are the superior strategies for a winning portfolio?
Your questions answered by 30 years
of undisputed leadership.
Only at the Market Today Summit.
This is as ugly as it gets. If you thought our netas couldn't stoop lower than this, think again. Whether it's BJP or Congress, it's the same low-level political discourse in Karnataka. You've heard of chaddi politics, and now it's stooped to prostitutes and pimp jibes in Karnataka. With elections round the corner, political parties have intensified attacks on each other. And by intensified, we mean downright below-the-belt comments. So how did this ugly political showdown begin? B.K. Hariprasad of the Congress called a defector a prostitute and said he's lost all self-respect.
ಯಾವುದೇ ಸರ್ಕಾರವನ್ನು ಆಯ್ಕೆ ಮಾಡದೇ ಇದ್ದ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಅತಂತ್ರ ವಿಧಾನಸಭೆ ಇದ್ದು ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಯನ್ನ ತಿರಸ್ಕಾರ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಸಹ ಸಮ್ಮಿಶ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ನೋಡಿದ್ರಿ. ಆದರೆ ಕೆಲವು ಶಾಸಕರು ತಮ್ಮ ಮಾರಾಟ ತನ್ನ ಹೊಟ್ಟೆಪಾಡಿಗಾಗಿ.
After the obvious outrage, he apologized, not for his language though.
I had referred to the sex workers who for their livelihood they live with dignity, but it has been distorted. If my statement has hurt any sex workers, I regret for the same.
In no time came a reply from the Saffron Party. ensuring their language too was as lowly as Congress.
ಹರಿಪ್ರಸಾದ್ ಯಾವ ಚುನಾವಣೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಗೆದ್ದು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ? ನಾವು ನೇರವಾಗಿ ಗೆದ್ದು ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀವಿ, ಜನರಿಂದ ಆಯ್ಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀವಿ, 4 ಬಾರಿ ಆಯ್ಕೆಯಾಗಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಹರಿಪ್ರಸಾದ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಆಯ್ಕೆಯಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹಿಂಬಾಗಿಲಿಂದ ಬರುವಂತವ್ರನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿಬೇಕು? ನಾವು ಭವಿಷ್ಯ ಪಿಂಪ್ಗಳು ಅಂತ ಕರಿಬಹುದಾ?
In no time, the political comments were flowing in. Chief Minister Bommai slammed the grand old party, accusing it of stooping to new lows, but offering no comment on his own party man's comments.
It is not worth reacting. It is such a low thing, it is not worth reacting.
The BJP and Congress escalated the fight, pinning the blame on each other over this obscene war of words.
They give examples of dogs, and now today Hari Prasad has gone still lower by calling them as prostitutes. He is the opposition leader in the upper house. He should realize he needs to be more responsible and matured.
What he might have inferred is that these MLS have sold themselves for power and money, and those people who sell themselves, I don't think so. These MLS deserve any more dignity.
With the political temperature soaring, the standard of politics in Karnataka is reaching new lows clearly. Bureau Report, India Today. Let's cut across live this evening to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who's speaking in Mumbai.
ट्रांसपोर्ट सिस्टम हम तेजी से लाना चाहते हैं. हाइड्रोजन फ्यूल से जुड़े ट्रांसपोर्ट सिस्टम के लिए भी देश में मिशन मोड पर काम चल रहा है. यही नहीं, हमारे शहरों में कूड़े की, वेस्ट की जो समस्या है, उसे भी हम नई टेक्नोलॉजी से दूर करने के लिए एक के बाद एक कदम उठा रहे हैं. वेस्ट टू वेल्थ का बहुत बड़ा अभियान देश में चल रहा है. नदियों में गंदा पानी ना मिले, इसके लिए वाटर ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट लगाए जा रहे हैं. साथियों, शहरों के विकास के लिए देश के पास सामर्थ्य की और राजनीति की इच्छा शक्ति की किसी भी चीज की कमी नहीं है. लेकिन हमें एक बात और समझनी होगी. मुंबई जैसे शहर में प्रोजेक्ट को तब तक तेजी से नहीं उतारा जा सकता जब तक स्थानीय निकाय की प्राथमिकता भी तेज विकास की ना हो. जब राज्य में विकास के लिए समर्पित सरकार होती है, जब शहरों में सुशासन के लिए समर्पित शासन होता है, तभी ये काम तेजी से जमीन पर उतर पाते हैं. इसलिए मुंबई के विकास में स्थानीय निकाय की भूमिका बहुत बड़ी है. मुंबई के विकास के लिए बजट की कोई कमी नहीं है. बस मुंबई के हक का पैसा सही जगह पे लगना चाहिए. अगर वो भ्रष्टाचार में लगेगा, पैसा बैंकों की तिजोरियों में बंद पड़ा रहेगा, विकास के काम को रोकने की प्रवृत्ति होगी, तो फिर मुंबई का भविष्य उज्जवल कैसे होगा? मुंबई के लोग, यहां के सामान्य जन परेशानियां झेलते रहे, ये शहर विकास के लिए तरसता रहे। ये स्थिति 21वीं सदी के भारत में कभी भी स्वीकार्य नहीं हो सकती है और शिवाजी महाराज के महाराष्ट्र में तो कभी नहीं हो सकती है। मैं मुंबई के लोगों की हर परेशानी को समझते हुए बहुत बड़ी जिम्मेवारी के साथ इस बात को रख रहा हूं। भाजपा की सरकार हो, एनडीए की सरकार हो, कभी विकास के आगे राजनीति को नहीं आने देती। विकास हमारे लिए सबसे बड़ी प्राथमिकता है। अपने राजनीतिक स्वार्थ की सिद्धि के लिए भाजपा और एनडीए की सरकारें कभी विकास के कार्यों पर ब्रेक नहीं लगाती। लेकिन हमने पहले के समय मुंबई में ऐसा होते बार बार देखा है। पीएम स्वनिधि योजना भी इसका एक उदाहरण है। हमारे शहरों में रेहड़ी वाले, पटरी वाले, ठेले वाले, ये काम करने वाले साथी जो शहर की अर्थव्यवस्था का अहम हिस्सा है, उनके लिए हमने पहली बार योजना चलाई। हमने इन छोटे व्यापारियों के लिए बैंकों से सस्ता और बिना गारंटी का ऋण निश्चित किया। देश भर में लगभग 35 लाख रेहड़ी पटरी वालों को इसका लाभ मिल चुका है। इसके तहत महाराष्ट्र में भी 5 लाख साथियों को ऋण स्वीकृत हो चुके हैं। आज भी 1 लाख से अधिक साथियों के बैंक खाते में सीधे पैसे जमा हो गए हैं। ये काम बहुत पहले होना चाहिए था। की सरकार ना होने के
Okay, so that's the Prime Minister's address right now happening in Mumbai. Remember, he's inaugurating 2 metro lines, also hugely politically significant because of the timing of it. It's ahead of the BMC elections. We'll get you all of the highlights of what the Prime Minister is saying. I'm slipping into a very short break. Coming up on the other side is an exclusive conversation that I had with director Rajkumar Santoshi on his latest film, Godse Gandhi Ek Yudh. There are questions about whether Godse has been eulogized in the film. We'll discuss that in just a bit.
पर क्या करें, गांधी